The XLR's back in the garage. What's that about? Stick around. What is going on, everybody? Today is going to be just kind of a vlog talking about the XLR, the smoke monster, everything else. What is going on project-wise, and why is the beautiful, beautiful Cadillac XLR back in the garage right now in place of the Nova? And it blows my mind how much smaller this thing is than the Nova. I've got so much room to work around this. Well, long story short, here's the plan, and this is going to make a lot of you happy to hear this because we're going to pivot a little bit on the smoke monster. We're going to take the Terminator X off the XLR and put it on the smoke monster, and we'll be tuning the smoke monster with the Holly. I know a lot of you guys are wanting more content on the Holly, and I'll be honest with you, it's nothing against the AEM stuff. It's very advanced, more advanced than we really need. And for the kind of car that we're putting this thing on, it's way overkill. So I thought, you know what, let's jerk the AEM out. Let's go ahead, get the Terminator out of the XLR and swap it over and run, you know, the Terminator on the smoke monster. A lot easier, and you know, a lot easier to get parts. They're cheaper, stuff like that. You know, if the Terminator craps the bed, you know, it's like $800 for the brain unit for a Terminator Max. And technically, well, no, we don't even need a Terminator Max. We could run a Terminator or even a Holly EFI on it and have everything that we need on there. So that's kind of the process. But what does that mean for Project Country Club? Well, we're going to do something a little bit weird. We're actually going to take this thing all the way back to stock. And that's going to be a pretty in-depth process. And I'll tell you why. I've hacked this harness to bits to get all of the integrated systems on this thing to work with a Holly Terminator X. I'm guessing, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, this is probably the only North Star, you know, XLR on a Terminator. There's probably some guys out there running North Stars on a Terminator in some weird kit cars and stuff like that. But as far as an XLR, I'm guessing this is the only one on a Terminator. This may be the only XLR on a Terminator for that matter. A lot of the guys that end up doing swaps on this swap over to the E38 platform. So they're running LS3s, LSAs, and things like that because most of the integrated systems will work on that because after 2005, they went to the E38 on both the naturally aspirated and the XLR-V, which is the 4.4 liter supercharged one. Both of those are E38s, same thing that's on the LS3 and the LSA. Well, I take that back. The LSA might be that weird E78 or whatever it is. But the architecture is the same, and so all the CAN bus communications that are needed to make all these systems play nice together integrate very well. So why are we going back to stock? Well, it's because I need to get this thing running and out of here so I can make room for the smoke monster for the big block swap. And it's the path of least resistance, I think. Fingers crossed that that ends up being the truth because the factory ECM and TCM are still installed in this thing. The ECM is run piggyback for the gauges, even though we have the Holly digital dash in there, the factory gauges still work. So a lot of that stuff still works. The factory TCM is in there, I think, solely for being able to take the roof down because you can't lower the roof unless it's in park. And there was no way to replicate the park signal from the aftermarket unit that we have running this TCM. I tried, I found the signal, the roof would start to go down and then it would stop because it has some kind of watchdog timer on it to make sure that the TCM is still talking. And there's a lot of stuff that I've done on that side with the CAN bus, deciphering messages. You know, the push button start was a big one. Getting that to work where it would turn the car on and then turn the car off was a very big pain because all that ties back through the BCM. And then it has to go out to the factory ECM and get a permissive from it. And so all of these things were kind of mishmashed nastily together. And we're going to get rid of all that crap. Go back in. I've got a brand new TCM harness, which I don't know that I necessarily need the TCM one because I think the only thing that is clipped on the TCM connector is the CAN bus wires to bypass that connector. And so all the other stuff would talk. And then, of course, the ECM harness is just destroyed. Multiple reasons. For one, all of the top side engine stuff, I just lopped all that jazz off. Injectors, ignition coils, what else? cam position sensors, all that stuff is gone, cut out of the harness. I probably have all those connectors in a box somewhere. I do not want to go back, solder those things, crimp them up, heat shrink them, all that jazz, because you know, a harness is about $300 used for this thing. So, and that's a full takeoff, no cuts. Then on top of it, the connectors that actually go to the ECM. If you remember, we did try to run this thing on an E38 with no success, and that was because of the cam signal differences. The E38 4.6 liter uses a 4X intake cam and a 1X exhaust cam, which matches up with everything else that runs on the E38. This is still a 58X tooth crank, so that part would have worked, but this is an 8X intake as opposed to the 4X, and short of pulling the cams out and replacing those with new cam gears, which you just can't get, that has the correct reluctors, it wasn't going to work on the E38. And then on top of it, almost all of these sensors, like the cam and crank position sensor on this platform, is a 12-volt sensor, as opposed to the E38 later generation stuff is all 5-volt based sensors. So luckily, I still have all those sensors. In fact, most of them are probably still installed on the car. They're just not hooked up right now. So it should be a pretty clean cutover. The only thing that's going to be an issue on this is this harness is really snaked down into some spots that are going to be very hard to get it off of the motor. Specifically, it comes down the backside of the motor, which there's almost no room to get there. So we might have to do some crazy stuff to get to that portion. Then it drops down the side underneath the headers and goes up to the front harness, connects in up there. But we'll talk about all that as we get into it. I just want to give you guys some insight as to what's going on with Project Country Club. What is the next step for Smoke Monster? Well, the camshaft is shipping tomorrow, so we will get that installed, get the push rods measured out for the big block. I've got header flanges with stubs on the way, so we can, once they show up and we get the thing in, we're going to have to build the headers out. So we've got plenty of work to get done on the Nova. We just want to get this done and out of the way, get this running back on the stock setup. That way we have the Terminator. Terminator has an LS1 harness on it. Most of that's going to be cut off, trimmed down to make look nice, because it still has the long links, like 6, 7, 8 foot links on that thing, and they're tucked up underneath the actual unit in the where the battery was on the XLR. Since we have Deutsch connectors for all of the stuff for the most part, and what we don't have, we can add them on. We will be hacking the Terminator harness down and converting that specific to the Nova and going from there. So that's just a quick update here at the garage. I want to thank everybody as always for stopping by. You know the drill. ABT, always be tuning.